Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Can I have your attention, please? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is our first council meeting for 2023 and it's great to be here. Just a couple of housekeeping issues that I'll quickly go over. That this meeting is a public meeting. It's being recorded to improve access to the meeting for our community. The recording will be published and will be retained by council in accordance with council's legal obligations. As a visitor in the gallery, your presence may be recorded. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd also like to acknowledge we're hosting this meeting on the grounds or the area of the Bangarang people. Pay my respects to their elders past, present. I'd also like to acknowledge all great people in the rural city of Wangaratta in which we meet here today. Ladies and gentlemen, I would also like to just have a prayer to help guide this meeting. So, Almighty God, we humbly ask Thee to bless, thank you, Harry, and guide this council in its deliberations so that we may truly preserve the welfare from the people that we serve. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a fairly short agenda today, but we have a confidential item that is at the end of the meeting and we will then go out to the room and discuss this confidential item and we'll come back and close the meeting. So at that time, you are most welcome to leave at that time. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll just quickly go around the room and introduce our fellow councils and senior management team here, just so you're aware of who you're dealing with. And I'll start with Director Goonan and your area of expertise. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Marcus Goonan, my Directorate is Community and Infrastructure.
Councillor Dave Fuller, City Ward.
Councillor
Councillor
Irene Grant, Warby Ward.
And portfolios?
And my portfolios are economic development and sustainability and environment.
Sorry.
And also, and the arts.
And the arts too, thank you. I'll just go back to Councillor Fuller for your portfolio range.
Arts and Culture and the Agriculture.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley Fitzpatrick, City Ward, and my portfolios is Community Wellbeing, Youth, Families and All Abilities.
Hi, I'm Brendan McGrath, I'm the CEO.
Councillor Dean Rees, I'm the Mayor of the rural city of Wangaratta, and thank you for having me. Oh, sorry, portfolios as well, yes, is planning, and I'm also on economic development with Councillor Grant.
Councillor Harvey Litton, Deputy Mayor, and I have infrastructure's not there now. It's agriculture, emergency, and sport and rec advisory committee.
Harry Bussell, Councillor of the South Ward, and my portfolio is tourism and sport. Thank you.
Good evening everyone, Councillor Jack Perry, and Community Engagement and Sustainability, Environment and Resource Recovery are my portfolios. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Simone Norman. I'm currently acting for Stephen Swart as Director of Sustainability and Culture.
Good evening everyone, my name is Sarah Brinzion, I'm the Director of Corporate and Leisure.
Thank you, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll move through the agenda now quickly and we'll go to item number 7, which is the confirmation, and it is the recommendation is the Council has read and confirmed the minutes of the ordinary meeting hosted on the 12th of December 2023 as a true and accurate record of proceedings of this meeting. Councillor Benton, would you like to move that?
Yes, I'll move the recommendations, Mayor.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please? Councillor Grant. If there's no conversation from the audience, any changes, I feel it's a true and accurate record. And if no councillor would like to talk on the recommendation, okay. We'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour of the true account, and the recommendation is carried. Thank you. We'll now move to item number 9.1, and I'll introduce Director Goonan to share that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a petition presented to Council containing 104 signatures The petition requests that council assist in the construction of a small storage shed in a discrete location on council-owned land in Gunhouse Park, El Dorado. It is stated that this will ease the burden of storage at a private residence and loading and unloading of equipment for the use in the community food share there. The recommendation from councillors is that the petition regarding this request be received by council and that a report and investigation to this be received at the March ordinary council meeting. Just like to add that council officers have had a number of meetings now with the community group involved in this, and there has been a middle ground found that is satisfactory to both the community group and also council officers. This involves the installation of chairs and tables once the community group finds funding for that installation, and the use of a small area within the hot water service storage facility on site. So this has now been resolved from an officers and the community point of view.
So Director Goonan, the recommendation from you?
The recommendation again is that the petition is received and a report into the investigation for this petition is considered at the March ordinary council meeting.
Sorry. Thank you, Director Goonan. Can I go to Councillor Fitzpatrick? You have an alternate recommendation you'd like to raise? Or?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll have point 1 as recommended, but point 2 being that the petition be referred to the CEO for consideration and a response.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any questions from the gallery? Oh, sorry. Councillor Fitzpatrick has moved that, and a second, please, on that recommendation. Councillor Fuller. If there's no questions from the gallery, Councillor Fitzpatrick, did you need to say anything on that? Councillor Fuller. Okay. Any other councillor like to talk on that recommendation? No. Put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. We'll now move over to item number 12.1 in executive services, and it is the MAV delegation report, and I'll refer to CEO McGrath.
Thanks, Mayor. As part of our membership, we need to nominate both a delegate and an alternate delegate in case the delegate is unavailable. At the moment, as the Mayor, Councillor Rees is the delegate, and we're just looking for a motion tonight to nominate who our alternate to Councillor Rees would be.
Thank you. I'll just point out that the MAV is the Municipal Association of Victoria. And are there any questions from the gallery on this item? I'll look for a mover. Councillor Grant, could you please move?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that we retain you as the Mayor, as the delegate, and to appoint Councillor Harvey Beaton as the substitute delegate for the Municipal Association of Victoria in your absence, should that occur.
Thank you. So can I have a second for that? Councillor Fitzpatrick. Councillor Grant, did you need to talk on that?
Well, only to say that it's been usual for the council to have the deputy mayor as the MOP substitute, so it's just right to do that now.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzpatrick? I'd just like to talk on it too. I have been the delegate now for 6 years, and prior to Councillor Benton, Councillor Bustle was my delegate and did have to attend on a couple of occasions. And it's great to have the Deputy Mayor, whoever that is at the time, to be there at that, as we have close contact all the time. So I too would like to reiterate Councillor Grant's thoughts on that. So, is there any other councillors like to talk on the recommendation? No? I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. I'll now move to item 13.1, which is the Council Plan Strategic Indicators and Actions Update for Q2 from October of last year to the end of December 23. And I'll hand over to Director Brindley.
Thank you. Under the Local Government Act, all councils have to adopt a 4-year council plan, which outlines our commitments for the actions that the council will deliver over that 4-year period and the strategic indicators that will demonstrate progress. We're now in the 4th year of the current council plan. And one of our other obligations is to provide reporting to give transparency on progress against delivering those actions. So this report provides those reports for the last quarter to advise the community on that progress. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the gallery on this item? No. I'll look for a mover recommendation. Councillor Benton and Councillor Fuller to second it. Councillor Benton, did you need to talk on the recommendation?
I only decided to put further work forward, this thing together to make sure that it lines up with the actions that have taken place and it's there for the transparency of everybody. That'll do.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller? No. Any other councillor like to talk to the recommendation? No. We'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Director Brindley, 13.2 is the Audit and Risk Committee Independent Member reappointment, please.
Thank you. So the Audit and Risk Committee provides important independent oversight of how the council is managing its finances and risks and our overall governance of those. And the committee has 3 independent members and 2 councillor members. This report is seeking council's endorsement to reappoint Vito, who has been the chair for the last 2 years and has just ended his first 3-year term, and seeking approval to appoint him for a further second 3-year term, which requires a council resolution as per the charter of the Audit and Risk Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. If there are no questions from the gallery, I'll look for a mover of the recommendation. Councillor Herry, thank you. And a second to Councillor Grant. Councillor Herry, would you like to talk as a member of the Audit and Risk Committee?
Yeah, certainly. Just to, I guess, reiterate a couple of points that Director Brindley made. Vito has been a proactive and diligent member of the Audit and Risk Committee and a fantastic chair for the past couple of years, and he presents with very strong application, and I have no reservations in recommending him in this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Herry. Councillor Grant, did you want to talk on?
I need to thank Mr. Giudice for his work and his commitment to the Audit and Risk Committee.
Thank you, Councillor. I also would like to say that Vito has been a valued member here in relation to audit and risk, and his knowledge and accounting background has been a great asset to the rural city of Wangaratta. So thank you again to his great service, and look forward to having him on for another 3 years as a member of that audit and risk. If there's no other councillor like to talk on the recommendation, and Councillor Herry, did you want to finish off as the mover? No. Put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 14, and 14.1 is under the community and infrastructure, and it is the fair access policy. Thank you, Director Goonan.
Thank you. This report is presented to Council to endorse the draft Community Sport Facilities Booking Policy, the Community Sport Fair Access Policy, and the Action Plan for the Fair Access Policy. On July 1, the state government put in funding criteria for community and sports infrastructure, and this requires us to complete gender equability, access and use policies. These need to be developed with an accountable outcomes, which require consultation with community sporting groups and the wider community. In November 2023, the first drafts of these documents were presented to the corporate management team. The drafts attached have been modified based on feedback from both that team and also the Sport and Rec Advisory Committee and the Office for Women in Sport and Recreation. The recommendation is that Council endorses the draft Community Sporting Facility Booking Policy and Community Sporting Fair Access Policy for public exhibition to 28 days. If any amendments are made to either policy due to submissions, then the policy will be reviewed at a further council meeting. If no submissions are received by this time, then these policies will be adopted without further resolution from council.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions from the gallery on this? Please, Anne, come forward, state your name Please ask a question.
It's Anne Dunstan from Tarrawingi. Just questioning, is this going to trigger a response to your public toilet facilities as well for fair access across gender abilities? Because if you're changing the sports and rec facilities, your public toilets might fall under that same review.
Thank you for the question. Director Goonan?
It is specifically for sporting facilities, so it would incorporate toilets if they're part of the sporting facility. I think if we look at the situation in Tarrawingi, which you're obviously pointing towards. Okay. If we look at Tarrawingi though, that is there is both toilets within the sporting facility and also outside. We would say the outside ones are public use, so therefore not part of the sporting facility, but the ones that sit within the building are part of the sporting facility. The thing to stress with this policy, it is specific to sport. So it's not about general access, it is about gender access to sport in facilities.
I'm really pleased to hear it's not going to trigger public bathrooms. So fantastic, thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Are there any further questions from the gallery? No? I'll look for a mover. Councillor Benton to move, Councillor Fuller to second, and Councillor Benton as the mover. Would you like to talk, please?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. First, I'll say that I'm supporting the motion and mainly in principle, and I've got no hesitation about the access, and it is gender access, fair access policies. But I will say that in reading some of the documentations that support this document, plus other document, I think we're going to have to treat very, very carefully, and I support Director Goonan's comments in relationship to the meeting with the community and leading them along. And I will say one thing, it does cover in the policy the committee of management of DECA Reserve as well. I just find that this has been led from top to bottom. It's come down through the bureaucrats. It hasn't, in my opinion, come from the community. Because when we have a look at, this is for the rural city of Wangaratta, this document is going to help, I hope, in relationship to funding some of the amenity blocks that are going forward. But the data that we see that's there, when we have a look at the two O&M clubs that are in Wangaratta, the football, netball clubs, they both have female at the head of the organisation, and they have a great big percentage, and one has a majority of females on the board. Plus we have a rugby club that has a female president, plus an O&K have a female president as well. So I think we've got to just make sure that some of the documentation that support why this has to come about, and I think it's, as I say, it's just bureaucracy, that a lot of these community groups are volunteers, and they're already overrun with bureaucracy, red tape. And if this is just going to end up being another lot of red tape that they've got to get through a heap of hoops to get funding, because I can't see why we haven't had the funding come through when you have tennis clubs, golf clubs that have mixed sports, mixed competitions already. And yet the government now are saying this has to be in place because there's a stick in the carrot, because if you don't have one, you're not going to get funding. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll urge all our community groups to make themselves aware of this plan and get in contact with the officers that are mentioned in the documents to get more direction to how they fit with it within the 29 days and make sure it works, or it'll just end up being another piece of paper that sits and frustrates the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. Councillor Fuller, did you want to talk on it? Any other councillor like to talk on the recommendation? Councillor Herry, please.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. Yeah, while the motivation for some of this may be coming from external sources, I wouldn't say it's wholly outside the organisation, and it's not just a onerous and non-beneficial, useless piece of bureaucracy. I think one thing we could all agree on is that you can't say that sport and the sport scene in Australia is a hugely gender equitable space or necessarily safe space for everyone to be in, and this the action policy and the policy and the action plan, it's not just about toilets, it's about things like prioritisation of who gets to use the grounds and when, and how spaces feel, lighting, safety, those sorts of concepts. So it's a lot broader. And another thing, just in closing, is I think we need to always remind ourselves that we live in a community that does have some concerning statistics around gender-based violence and those sorts of considerations. And while this isn't a direct response to that, it's about shifting the way we relate to each other, shifting cultures, and moving towards a better space, more comfortable space for everyone. So I'm happy to endorse this endorsement. Thank you.
Just before you, any other councillors like to respond to that? But in closing, Councillor Benton, if no one else? Yep, Councillor Benton as the mover, did you have any further response?
The only thing I will say is in reply to Councillor Herring's situation of making it feel comfortable in relationship to the genders there, and it is a gender access. The community have been doing this without a policy. They've already done that. So how's the policy going to make it feel any better other than a bureaucratic horse's collar, as far as I'm concerned, to get there? If it doesn't, and that's where I'm saying we're going to have to make sure we do this properly at the end of the 2-year period, which is up for review, and make sure that everyone's comfortable with going forward. Because if we didn't have the comfortable people there, or the people didn't feel comfortable, we wouldn't have the people that are in positions now that are female. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Thank you, Director Gooner. We'll move on to 14.2, which is the Hall Committee member nominations.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report is presented to Council to endorse the nominations for volunteers to the Committees of Management under the Community Asset Committee Instrument of Delegation. Yes, all of those words. These are additional community members who have requested spots onto local committees of management, and council officers have supported them. These committees of management are the Edi Upper Hall, Eldorado Memorial Hall, Millwall Hall and Park, Everton Hall and Reserve, and Moyuse Soldiers Memorial Hall. The recommendation is that council endorses the nominations in the attached report for these committees.
Thank you, Director Gooner. Are there any questions for the gallery on this item? No? I'll look for a mover for this. Councillor Bustle, thank you. And a seconder, please. Councillor Benton. Councillor Bustle, did you want to talk on the recommendation?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I want to thank any outgoing citizens who worked on these committees. The Hall committees, they don't only look after the building, but they also are very important people in the community. And I don't want their work to go unnoticed. So thank all the outgoing ones, and thank the community members that are already existing on these community halls. And if this is endorsed, welcome the new members onto the Hall committee. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor like to talk on the recommendation? No? I'll put the recommendation on the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Bustle, now that we have accepted that, the confidential attachments with the names, could you please read them out, please?
Edi Upper Hall, Greg Whittaker. Eldorado Memorial Hall, Michael Carey. Bowman's Mamungi, Jane Witherow. Millwall Hall and Park, Beverly Tiffin, Bernard Neal, Fiona Neal. Everton Hall and Reserve, Brenton Haywood. Moyuse Soldiers Memorial Hall, Regina Calloway. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you to all those members on those committees. We'll move on now to item 15.1, and I'll introduce Acting Director Simone Nolan, Sustainability and Culture, re the planning permit application 22/13625 Pinot Drive, Wangaratta, which is a 2-lot re-subdivision and variation of the restriction.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report is presented to Council to determine a planning permit application for two-lot re-subdivision and variation of a restriction at 25 Pin Oak Drive, Wangaratta. Pursuant to instrument of delegation, officers do not have delegation to determine a planning permit application that is subject to 4 or more objections. At the time of officers writing this report, 5 objections were received. Since the receipt of objections, the applicant has modified their original proposal by withdrawing their concurrent application to amend a section 173 agreement and the consequential addition of a dwelling entitlement on the proposed Lot 2. Having undertaken an assessment of the application against the Wangaratta planning scheme and having considered public submissions to the proposal and responses from referral authorities, officers are of the view that the application is consistent with the Wangaratta planning scheme. A full assessment is included in the attachment of the report, and the recommendation is up on the screen and is as follows: that Council is recommended to grant a planning permit for the two-lot re-subdivision and variation of a restriction at 25 Pin Oak Drive, Wangaratta, subject to the conditions contained in the attachment. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Director. Are there any questions for the gallery on this item? I'll look for a mover of the recommendation, please. Come forward. Councillor Benton, sorry, and Councillor Herrick. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Benton, did you want to talk on the recommendation?
I just think this application is a far better proposal than the first one that came in. I think it will satisfy a lot of the local people that are very close to that area.
Thank you. Councillor Herrick, did you want to talk on the recommendation as the seconder?
Yeah, I guess just to reiterate that there were significant changes to the proposal with the removal of that variation of the 173 and the another dwelling on the additional block after subdivision. And while none of the applications were modified at all, I don't believe, I think those modifications to the planning permit that has been submitted are significant and ameliorate a lot of the original concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Herrick. Any other councillor like to talk on the recommendation? No. Councillor Benton as the mover, did you have anything further? Okay, I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for that. We'll now move on to, we have no notice of motion, no urgent business, but before we go out, we will go now straight to public question time. Ladies and gentlemen, you have the right to get up and ask any question about anything. If we do not know the answer, we will take it on notice and get back to you through the week in relation to what the answer may be. You have the entitlement to 2 questions per person. Would anybody like to raise a public question? Oh, Mr. Fox first. I saw him first. Thank you, Mr. Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A wonderful day, the first meeting of the year. Good to see all the smiling faces. However, I look here at councillors' reports. I would like you, Mr. Mayor, to ask the CEO to change the format of the agenda and list all of the councillors' names and their portfolios, and during the course of the meeting, if you were to ask each councillor individually, do they have anything to report on their portfolio? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fox. I will certainly talk to the CEO in relation to that, but I will say that all councillors have the ability to talk at any time throughout the meeting on any subject that is recommended. We also have areas with relation to notice of motions, etc., that councillors are certainly allowed to raise and bring up at any time. Are they allowed to talk about in the early part of the agenda about situations with their portfolios, they are always allowed to, and we highly recommend them to. They do a lot of work outside of the council meeting to resolve issues and situations and use their portfolios through that probably don't need to be reported on, but they are certainly welcome to do so at any stage.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the gallery? Thank you, John. John Griffiths, if you just come up and I think you know the right button to push. You certainly pushed my buttons a few times, John.
John Griffiths from Raleigh. I've got two short questions. They both relate to signs and
Thanks, Sam. Just 1 sec, John. That's it. Gotcha.
Thank you. Question in relation to signs, and there's been some improved signage out in my direction, out on the Snow Road, but I'm a bit concerned about, I just raised a question about two issues. First one is the sign for Oxley, and I believe, that's my question, that is there a mistake in saying that Oxley has been named by the explorers Hume Hobble? In my view, there's not a town of Oxley existing at that time, so they couldn't name such a town. What they actually did, I believe, is they just named the area as Oxley Plains. And I just think it's a little bit confusing to say that they did name Oxley.
John, we'll take that under advisement and have a look into it. Councillor Bustley, you wouldn't have any information on that, would you, at all? Being a great southern man out there in the southern ward. We'll do a bit of investigate. To Director Goonan.
Thanks for the question, John. So originally there was going to be no fingerboards, which are basically those boards underneath that sign. We had quite a bit of feedback from the community that they would like the fingerboards replaced with exactly what was on the original sign. So that's actually the wording from the original sign. So happy to check into whether that's actually correct or not, but it is actually the wording of the original sign.
Yeah. Okay, the second one, I've got evidence of both of these situations. I took some photographs the other day. The second one is in regard to the Markwood sign. The Markwood sign, and it's a good one, has been placed, to my way of thinking, on the wrong side of Forest Lane. To me, you're coming from Melbourne side, from Millwa, you cross over Forest Lane, and about 100 metres down, then you get the sign to Markwood. And Forest Lane is the entry point for a tip, whatever you might call it these days. And obviously people can drive past and miss the tip. So to me, the sign needs to be moved to the other side of Forest Lane.
Thank you, John. Good question. We'll take that also under advisement. You haven't got any thought on that, Director? I can't remember. It's obviously on the same side as Forest Lane. It's not on the left side of the road. It's on the right side.
Well, it's on the left side because that's where you'll be driving, but you go past Forest Lane and you meet, I think it's Andrew Gibbs. He's got a whole lot of, the area, steam engine equipment, and right opposite where he is, that's where the sign is, and you've already passed Forest Lane.
Thank you. John, we'll take that under advisement and have a look into it.
Well, can I ask a question?
Yes, please. Not sure with the microphone or no. It's that microphone again. You just turn that. Oh, that's better.
So my question relates back to the community fair access policy now that it's been passed.
Yep.
This is directed at Councillor Herry. Seeing community engagement is your portfolio. How are you going to communicate with these sporting clubs this draft policy that's been committed for review? Because as someone who is highly involved in sport, I'm the president of the Populary-Wodonga Association, so it's a very, very intensive role, and I spend more than 40 hours as a volunteer each week doing that. we're going through the processes constantly of grants. We have fair access play, we have prides in sport grounds, we create really, really safe environments. And one of the problems that we have is the council that we operate under in the Albury-Wodonga region has created a very similar policy to this that has actually made our facility toilets more unuser friendly than when they were before we started. So it's really important that you're getting out to all these community groups to actually touch base with them and explain to them what the consequence of this policy actually is.
It's certainly a fair point, Anne, and I appreciate the question. I would hope that there is close collaboration. I don't doubt that there has been and will continue to be close collaboration from our officers in the Sport and Rec Department on this policy, both during the engagement period and also pending endorsement of any policy that might be revised, pending any feedback that we receive from the clubs, to support those clubs to actually implement it in a way that is going to be practical, but also be delivering upon the outcomes that we want to see. Because, I mean, granted, a point was made before about bureaucratic processes and things overlaid over already burdensome systems. You definitely want to be seeing positive outcomes out of any additional burden. Like, you don't just want additional burden that's not actually delivering results. And this policy and the action plan does have a measurement system in parallel, and council's performing some of the measurement, but I believe, and Director Gooner might correct me on this, but I believe a lot of the indicators are going to be measured externally, and we're going to get some of that feedback and then relate that to community, I would imagine. But I'll allow Director Gooner to add any further comments.
Thank you, Councillor Harry. And I think you're 100% right. The way that we go about engaging through this policy is going to be really important. There is some significant changes in it, and as I'm sure you would already know from your positions, some of this is being not forced on council, but it is being directed as a certain way that it needs to be done. I think what's going to be really important, not only for community clubs but also council, is to get a policy that's workable and meets the requirements, because we are going to find that we are just going to be cut out of all funding streams if we don't meet these requirements, and at least have the policy in place. How we then work with the policy will be the next important step. As far as communication with the community, it will obviously go and connect Wangaratta. We have already sent out quite a lot of information about it and feedback, and received feedback on that. We'll have drop-in sessions. We'll be going to the sporting clubs. We have a really good connection through our sport and rec team with all of the clubs. So, you know, all I can say is if any clubs out there are concerned, then please bring your feedback in nice and early, and we'll keep that conversation open.
So in relation to that, one of the problems is that if you presented this to me in my position, we're not going to have a board meeting before your feedback's required because of the 28-day turnaround. So sporting groups might be meeting with their committee meetings to be able to sit down and go through this policy and get back to you in the time frame that's allowed.
Yeah, the 28.
It's the process for 28 days.
Yeah. Certainly, from an officer's point of view, and my direction to my officers will be, just because the 28 days are done doesn't mean that we can cut off the communication then. We often receive submissions afterwards. We will see them right up until we're getting closer to the council meeting. Obviously, papers need to go out at a certain time. We need to brief councillors on some of the changes. If we're seeing significant change there, or still a significant number of responses coming back in closer to the date, we can look to extend that date at a future council meeting. So, you know, we'll certainly be flexible and work with the clubs there.
Might I just add to your further comments? That is precisely the fact why I personally have advocated on a number of occasions and moved amendments to motions, or not amendments, but motions that are differing from the recommendation, to adjust that 28-day time frame. and unfortunately it still has remained the default. We as a council did look into it, consider it. I was very much an advocate for looking at perhaps a longer default time frame. We did a little bit of investigation as to, because there's some concern around, well, does more time necessarily allow people or result in better feedback? And perhaps I've heard you voice your opinion that maybe it doesn't necessarily, but it's not necessarily, it's just about conflicting schedules. And like you say, you might not have a meeting in the 28 days. It's not going to be very convenient. So it's perhaps something that we should pick up as a council and, you know, have another look at, because I don't think it was conclusive that we defined, that we determined that 28 days is like the sweet spot. So.
Sorry, Irene?
Well, Director Goonan actually offered the opportunity that, you know, if it was going to be an issue, that, you know, you could flag it and then have the conversation with the officers. So it's not, while it's something that we need to, yeah, exactly.
So in relation to my initial question, you still didn't answer it. What are you personally going to do to engage it as the Director of Community Engagement? You deferred it to your sports and rec team, but you personally haven't answered the question. And my second question for the night would be, have you been in a sporting facility where you have had the onerous task of having to meet all these stringent requirements that are part of application and funding processes?
So to work backwards, have I been part of a sporting organisation as some sort of committee member or organising participant? No.
Yep.
No, I haven't. Yeah, I have been a part of other community organisations and have dealt with similar obligations and hoops that you have to jump through. Certainly, yeah, of all different kinds. So I'm sympathetic of that, certainly, but I just want to draw everyone's attention, I guess, back to what I ended my comments on, which is that issue of gender equity and striving for the outcomes. Like, if we keep our eyes on that goal, I think we're going to...
You said a whole lot of words, still haven't answered the question.
Well, I answered no to the second point of your question, and the first question, what am I going to do personally? I will tell constituents and talk to various constituents about it and engage as I do with other issues. I'm not going to necessarily do any specific initiative myself personally on this item.
No.
Thank you. I think we'll move on from that one. Are there any other questions from the gallery? No. So ladies and gentlemen, the area that we've come to now is the end of public question time. We're coming to confidential business. So confidential business in another room. So I need to move a recommendation, which I will do shortly, through Councillor Fuller. And but firstly, we will then come back and just resume business, close the meeting, and that will be the end. We may be 2 minutes in next door, we may be 5 or 10 minutes in next door. So if you feel the need to go, there's no problems. We'll look forward to seeing you again. Councillor Fuller, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that Council resolves to close the meeting to members of the public in accordance with Division 3, brackets 1 of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider the following items. 22.1, confidential tender cost, FOGO acceptance and processing services. Item 22.1 is confidential under the Local Government Act of 2020 as it contains information relating to A, council business information, being information that would prejudice the council's position in commercial negotiations if prematurely released.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Grant. But to there, all councillors in favour? And the recommendation is carried, so we'll move into the next door. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you again if you must go. gentlemen. And Councillor Fuller, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move a motion that council resolves to reopen the meeting to members of the public.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Fitzpatrick. All those in favour? Thank you. The recommendation is carried. So we're back open. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're back open to close the meeting. So, on behalf of the rural city of Wangaratta and all my valued colleagues here, thank you for your attendance today. And we look forward to a successful year moving ahead as our last council year together. So thank you, everybody, and have a good evening.
Excuse me, so Mr Mayor, you just made some decisions in there. That the decision making was confidential.
Yes.
Is the decision confidential?
Yes.
So
Yes.
tell me what the decision was that you made.
I can't, it's confidential. Otherwise I'd be out here making a decision. Let me just say it's a good one. So, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Mr Fox, thank you for your decision. And be confident in our confidentiality.
I'm confident in confidentiality, but I'm not confident in once you've made a decision that the decision is confidential. The discussion might be confidential.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Yeah, good night.
Good night, Mr Fox.